Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast, episode number 43. Special guest Billy Arnold and the story behind his monster Tennessee whitetail. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey, this is Doug Castrava from the Horny Buck Seed Company, and you're listening to my favorite podcast on iTunes, the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Jay Scott, your host of the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast, with your host and co-host, Jay and Dusty. Dusty, what's going on?
Not a whole lot. What's happening, Jay? Welcome to the Big Buck Registry Big Buck Podcast. So we hope you enjoy the show. We got a lot for you tonight.
We are here for you. We are here for everybody that is listening, that is a patron of the outdoor world. And, got a heck of a lot of great shows, a lot of contacts coming up on the Big Buck Registry. We've been talking to a lot of good people, people who have big-time TV shows already on all kinds of different stations, Sportsman's Channel, etc. And we're going to get to talk to those guys over the next 12 months or so.
Yeah, it's going to be just a revolving greatness for the podcast here with the celebrities, some new products that are just coming out. You know, we hooked up with Fox Pro. That's going to be an awesome podcast.
Fox Pro, absolutely. One of the great companies out there making some amazing predator calls and things that are going to enhance your predator hunting across the board. And we've talked about this before, and it is, if you're a deer hunter, you really need to be a predator hunter too, because it's going to enhance your deer hunting. And quite frankly, the predators are just more abundant. I mean, they're too abundant. They can destroy a herd. There's a balance. I'm not saying to go out and slaughter them all, but there is a balance we need to maintain. I think we just kind of forget about it. We don't tend to get out there and actually hunt predators in general.
So what we're saying, folks, if you guys need to be tuning in every Saturday at 5 a.m.
Yep, every Saturday, 5 a.m., you got to tune in to the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast with your hosts, Jay and Dusty. Tell your friends, if you hunt, tell your friends that you have this great show on iTunes that you like to listen to. You can also go to our websites, bigbuckregistry.com, and always pick it up there as well. Dusty, I've got an amazing guest on the show for us today.
Awesome. Tell us about him.
You ever heard of Kari and Billy, the Kari and Billy country and western duo?
Yeah, actually I have. They're starting to get a pretty big name out there.
They are. They're getting very big. They're going to a lot of the shows. We want to see them at the Great American Outdoor Show next year. We actually had Kari and Billy on the show back in June when we were talking to them about country and western music, and they wrote this great song called Whitetail Ridge, and that's what kind of drew us into them, and we thought that was awesome. I mean, they're just feeling it. They're passionate about the outdoors. Great country musicians, super talented. So, and here's the kicker: is that Billy's as talented as a hunter as he is a musician. That's the crazy part. You don't usually get both. He gets one or the other, but he has harvested what is probably going to be the next Tennessee buck record, the state record for the state of Tennessee.
Awesome.
Unbelievable. And he showed some pictures on Facebook, just this huge, inches, like beyond inches in an antler world. And we need to break it down, get into the big buck breakdown, and figure out how the heck he did it.
Let's break it down.
Let's break it down, man. Let's get Billy. Billy, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Hey, how you doing, man?
We're doing good. You are our first repeat guest on the Big Buck Registry.
Well, that's pretty awesome. That's an honor there.
I think it's great. And, we talked to a lot of people, and we don't usually get a repeat visitor because, we're trying to cover different content. But in this case, you actually fit the mold perfectly. Not only do you write great music about whitetail hunting, but you also shot a ginormous whitetail this past year.
Yeah, man, it's been a super cool year. It's really neat with writing songs about hunting. It's always been a huge passion of mine, but I didn't get into really writing much about stuff like that because it's just tough to write a hunting song. And you want to write something that people like, and not make fun of you, but there's so many terms we use out there hunting that it'd just be tough to put them into a song. So it's been really, really cool getting to see the responses that Kari and I have gotten through recording, Whitetail Ridge and just that kind of stuff, and traveling around playing different shows. Some of the shows that we've done are charity events that are kind of at hunting camps and things like that, and others are just events, where it's just an all-out outdoorsman event, and they hired us for entertainment. And so it's really neat to be on that side of things. And then as far as hunting, to get a deer like I got this year, I've said it to about everybody I've talked to so far. I've hunted for years and years and years, and I hunt hard. I try to hunt smart, and I really am just fanatical about it. But none of that guarantees you that you'll ever even see a buck like this. He's just incredible. I'm still on cloud nine. Can't believe that I was given that chance, man. The Lord blessed me with that opportunity, and I prayed over and over. I just prayed that if I got the opportunity at this deer, because I got pictures of him back in July, and I prayed, Lord, if I just get a chance at him, just calm me down, let me make a great shot. And I was even really specific. I said, Lord, if I make a shot on the deer, please let it only run about 40 or 50 yards top.
Right.
I just wanted it to be extremely ethical, and a deer like that is just magnificent.
Yeah.
I mean, to even have a trail cam picture of a deer like that. He had what turns out to be 25 scoreable points, and it's just tons of mass. He had around his beams between G3 and 4s, I believe, 7 and 7/8 cents mass measurements. So just crazy big deer. And
see, I can tell you're excited because
man,
and you're reliving it as we speak right now.
Absolutely.
I love it.
You just can't. I went on my bow hunt for the first time. I went bow hunting. It was 27 years ago. So, and I'm not one of the guys that does it a little bit, and it's kind of a fun hobby for me. I mean, there's been times where I probably borderline needed help, because I just do it too much, and I love it so much. I love to bow hunt, and I have to really fight the urge to spend all of my time doing that. I have to try to make sure I'm being a good husband and a good worker and all those things as well, but I've spent so many years and so much time in the tree stand in the woods and scouting and trying to get better at hunting, and tell you, but it just doesn't ever guarantee you a deer like this, even with your own eyes. That's to even see a deer like this in your lifetime is it's against all odds, and it is exciting. I can't believe it still. Even every time I look at the pictures or hold the antlers, just can't believe it happened for me.
Right. And Billy, you were on our show back in June, and we were talking about Whitetail Ridge, which is a story about a place that grows big whitetails, and how it's important to get, or the feeling you get when you get outside and you actually go hunting. And Kari was on the show with us at that time, and so you're familiar with the country setting. You're familiar with getting outside and hunting. Where did you develop those passions? Well,
I believe as a kid, I think it was in me all along. I remember as far back as I have memories, and I can remember when I was really, really super young. I would even like to watch a cat out in the yard stalking a bird or a squirrel. I was crazy about it. I always liked that kind of stuff, even as a tiny kid that wasn't hunting anything yet. And for me, my granddad, my papa, he was just everything to me. He was a hero to me, and he was like my father figure, and he loved to hunt and fish, and he gave me a bow. I guess I was probably about 4 or 5 years old when I got my first bow, and that was mine. I shot a bow younger than that, but I had my first bow. He gave me an old bear bow, and it was the little youth edition. It had a black handle on it, and man, I loved shooting that thing. And I would shoot all the time with him, and he went hunting all the time. But it was kind of a rule in our family: you weren't supposed to be able to go hunting, deer hunting, for the first time until you reached 11. That's when kind of the rule was for my papa's children, my uncles, who all enjoy hunting too. But with me, when I turned 9, he took me hunting for the first time. So I kind of got to break the mold because I just pestered him so much about going. And I just all the time, I remember he would get up at like 2 a.m. and he would be headed up. We lived down in South Florida at the time, and he would be getting up and headed up for Perry, which was up kind of going up toward Tallahassee. And it just seemed so cool to me as a kid, just like they were getting all the camping stuff together the day before, and then they would go and they'd bring home these deer and hogs and stuff, and I could not wait to go. But so that's kind of where it started for me, is just having such a respect and love for my uncles and my granddad, and watching them do it, and them taking the time with me. I think that's the most important thing you can ever do with kids these days, just take up time with them. Do something. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Do something that it's hands-on, and you go out and you actually do it. You make it happen yourself, and you know, we spent so much time in the yard digging up worms to go fishing or target practicing with our bows, and you know, growing up watching the Dukes of Hazzard, I wanted to shoot my bow at everything.
Heck yeah,
I got several spankings for that too. But you know, as soon as I turned about 8, my mom got me a BB gun, and good Lord, I was gone. You would not find me. That's all I cared about, is having BBs, and when I would run out of BBs or even getting close, I was pestering somebody about going to get me some more. And so, you know, I just always loved hunting and chasing after things. And so it's been my whole life that I've wanted to be out in the woods and hunting and fishing.
Right. I think Dukes of Hazzard was on just after The Incredible Hulk, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely, man. I used to watch that stuff, and I would sit there and watch, and I can tell you, man, you go sliding across the hood of your mom's car, pretending that you're Bo Duke, and that'll get you a spanking. And if you light an arrow on fire and shoot it at anything, well, there's another spanking for you. So,
yeah.
So it was definitely, you know, those shows were funny to look back on watching, but boy, they sure get you in trouble.
They got you in trouble. They were the best. And my dad had this old yellow Subaru when they first came out, when Subaru was just kind of being introduced in the U.S., and it was a stick shift. And I remember we'd watch Dukes of Hazzard, then we'd sneak out and get my dad's Subaru, and we'd have the parking brake on so we could shift and, you know, push in the clutch, pretend like we were flying, and jump in and out of the windows. But one time we accidentally let the brake off, and we rolled all the way down the driveway into the garden, which was a good 200 yards down the driveway. So we got in a little trouble on that one.
Yeah, I'm sure y'all got that sick feeling where you feel like all your blood just left your body, and you knew you were getting it bad.
Uh-oh.
But you know, it teaches you. It definitely teaches you character. We grew up watching The Fall Guy and Incredible Hulk and Dukes of Hazzard, and so we were training to be stuntmen. We were training to be ninjas, and we just but you know, it was a different time period. We were so absolutely physical, because everything that we did in our imagination, it was just as real as it could ever be, you know. And I think that it makes you competitive, it makes you agile and athletic, because you're constantly just trying to do everything you're seeing on TV, you know.
Absolutely. There's something about getting outside, actually. You know, you're very physical. You're just moving around, you do anything, you're jumping, you're hiking. I remember just going miles and miles on my Schwinn BMX bike, where I'd have my fishing pole and my tackle box, and I had a system. I'd bike out a good 10 to 15 miles on my BMX bike just to get to the fishing spot where I wanted to go in the stream, and fish the entire stream all day long. And that was some of the best summers I can ever remember.
Yeah, sounds like perfect time.
It was awesome, but it was a physical aspect. You were outside a lot. There was, you weren't sitting around. If I wasn't doing that, I was playing baseball. And
that's right. And that sounds like childhood for us. You know, we basically every day, you know, my mom saying when we would get up is get out,
right.
You know, and then because we weren't supposed to go in and out, you know, so we chose out. And we always, I mean, it was not like we just loafed around. When one activity was done, we were already picking the next thing we were going to do. And if it was fishing, it didn't matter. We were allowed to pretty much go wherever my mom knew we were going to stick together, and that didn't keep us from getting spankings or getting in trouble for where we would choose to go. But you know, we would go. If we passed a fishing hole somewhere, we didn't know how many miles it was to go back to that place. We just would go. We would set out, and if we knew it was 6 or 7, 8 miles to get to the place, we would get up and leave as soon as, you know, it'd be just breaking daylight. We may take off walking. That way we could still get there in time to get some of the morning fishing in. And so it definitely was a different lifestyle. We didn't have video games and all that.
Right.
Well, Lord knows, even if we did, we were not going to be allowed to sit in the house all day.
Yeah, and
sure.
Definitely a different time than it is today. Today, the advent of cell phone technology, smartphones, iPads, computers, we didn't have all that. I mean, the computer thing was just starting to take off. It was introduced not really into homes as much as more in the school systems where they first were coming in. But we didn't have a reason to sit down and stay in front unless you wanted to watch TV. But even then, all I got was TBS for the most part. You know, it was early days of cable box converters. So there wasn't a whole lot to watch.
I remember watching, you know, fishing shows and stuff on the weekends and hunting shows, and that would come on really early, and that would be generally on Saturdays, and I was out the door. But yeah, that's kind of, I get sidetracked on that, but the reason being is for a deer like what I got, you know, it was a free range deer. I have permission to hunt a tract of land, and it's there's not even any food plots around there. There's only acorns, and there's thickets that kind of run around the place, and so for me, it's not just a hunt. It's not just what happened for this year. It really does go back to being a kid and having that passion and that love for hunting. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't have learned all the different things necessary. And you know, so many people speculate on a story. I mean, the deer green scored 218 inches. So, you know, people, and in Tennessee, so that's what people, you know, they're going to start saying ranch or high fence, or that's a breeder buck, or all those types of things, which the areas that I hunt in Tennessee, I don't even know where there's a ranch anywhere in that part of the world. I have no clue. I mean, I know they have those places in Illinois or Iowa or wherever. They have big ranches in Texas and all that, but where we hunt in Tennessee is kind of woods, and there's some areas that we have that have soybean fields and corn fields and stuff like that, but this particular area is just only woods. It's just hardwood, and it's kind of a draw that runs through. But it's a culmination of all those years, because you know, people wonder about the story, and they say, oh, yeah, that's not hunting. You go out there and do this or that, but they don't know the real story. I mean, I got pictures of the deer, you know, probably, I think I've got maybe the first pictures in June, and that's when it was. The first pictures I got were in early June, and so from June all the way till, you know, about the third week in November, I never saw the deer, hunted over and over and over, and I've been on really big deer the last 3 years, and I never saw them with my own eyes. I got pictures of them, and giants, two bucks that were just crazy big, and never saw them with my own eyes, you know. And this deer, same thing. It was the last afternoon I was able to go hunt, and I wasn't even going to wind up going hunting. You know, and people wonder how did the story go. No, it wasn't a quick thing. I hunted over and over and over all season. Every single chance I got, I was in the woods, and never even ever laid eyes on the deer. And this particular afternoon, I was doing some work on the computer, and just kind of setting up our routing and stuff like that on some of our tour schedule. And Kari had some errands to run because we were fixing to leave town. We were getting ready to leave town, and that was pretty much my last afternoon to get to go hunt. And I didn't even ever have pictures of that deer in the afternoon. In 6 months, I had one picture where he walked by there in one afternoon. Okay. So there was just not high hopes of seeing him in the afternoon period. The only pictures I'd ever had of him was morning time. But Kari was out running some errands, and I was kind of busy on the computer, and I got lost in doing that, and the wind was wrong. I had this idea to hunt. I thought, you know, I'm going to go pass my lock on and take my climber and put a climber up. I'd not done that all season. I hadn't even tried that, and I thought, but if I go just past there and get up, there's a slight chance that if a deer came through between me and my other stand, then they would be upwind of me, and it would work. Otherwise, in all other directions, I would have been messed up. But since it was last afternoon, I thought about that. But then I just gave in and said, no, there's no way. I'm not going to see the deer. I've hunted my butt off this year, and I'm just not going to see the deer. You know how big bucks are, and
Yep.
And especially in the afternoon, but Kari called, and she said, hey, you've got some hunting stuff in the car. Do you need it? I'll turn around and come back to the house if you do. And I said, well, my bow is in your car, but don't worry about it. I changed my mind. I'm not going to go this afternoon. I'm just going to stay working on this computer. And she said, are you sure? I don't mind coming back, because you probably need to go. It's going to be about your last chance. And I said, no, I'm just not worried about it. The wind's wrong, and anyway, I probably just won't see the deer, period. So it was just over. Because we were leaving town, and that was going to be it. We were leaving town then, and we were not going to be back until in January. Then we were only making a pit stop, and we had to leave again immediately. So
wow.
There was not another time to go hunting for me.
Gotcha.
And,
Gotcha.
So I said, no, I don't worry about coming back. And she said, okay, well, I'm going to go and vacuum out the car and everything. So I'll be back in a little while. And I said, okay. And so that was it. That was my season. But then a few minutes later, she walked in, and she said that she had put her money in the vacuum cleaner at the place, and it took her money, and it didn't work. So rather than staying, she just left and came back to the house. And that was the only reason I was even able to go there, because my bow was in her car. And at that point, when she came back in, she said, you really ought to try to go one more time. And I said, well, I looked at her and I said, well, I guess what's the worst could happen if I go and don't see anything? Then that's the same thing that'll happen if I sit here on the couch. I'm guaranteed not to see anything here. So,
gotcha.
So I jumped up, I got a quick shower, and I took off. And I grabbed my climber. I went past where my lock-on is, and I got up a tree that kind of goes up the hill.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I have one shot. If a deer came out of the thicket and kind of stayed below me, then he would be upwind of me. Anywhere beside me or behind me, and then that'd be it. The wind's just wrong. And, well, as far as equipment, we're sponsored by Bowtech, and so I had my Bowtech. I had a Bowtech Extreme, and so that's what I was using in the afternoon. And my tree stand, I have a couple of different ones, but the climber that I carried in was an aluminum old man stand, and I was not very far at all from my lock-on, I was not very far at all from my lock-on, but the reason I carried that stand that afternoon was because of the wind. I thought it would be it'd be a lot easier to hunt the lock-on, but then the wind was just it was blowing out of the north that day, and I really needed a south wind to hunt there. And I just gambled. I went up the hill a little bit, got in my got in my climber and climbed up a tree. And I thought, the way the wind was kind of going, if anything came, that there was basically one way that the deer could come. And if they traveled and cut across this inside corner, then they could wind up upwind of me. But all the direction behind me, that's where I was kind of going to be dead in the water. But there was no other real way to hunt that particular spot. And so that's what I did. I just tried it. That was the only afternoon I did it. And I had hunted, I'd hunted that same area over and over and over and over all season, and just never saw the deer, never laid eyes on the deer. And of course, you have pictures before season, and then as soon as they shed that velvet, they just become scarce.
They're gone. The ghosts of the woods.
Yeah. It always happens like that.
They do, and I did get a couple of nighttime pictures of him on one of my cameras, and it was really cool to see that he wasn't broken up. His rack he's got a very gnarly rack, but he wasn't broken up or anything. And so it was definitely a relief when I did get pictures of him, because I just kept thinking, sure enough, he's going to wind up being all busted up and everything like that. But he wasn't. It was, he was in good shape when I did see him, but still, I only saw him through a trail cam picture, not with my own eyes. And I've done that several times before with other seasons where, you see trail cam pictures. It looks like, boy, I can't wait till season gets here. But as big bucks will do, they have another pattern that they like to stick to whenever they got hard horns. And so far, he was following the same MO. It just looked like I wasn't going to get a viewing of him, and that was the last afternoon. From then on, the next day I was going to be super busy getting everything ready to go, and then the day after that we would be gone. So
you had a chance at this deer. Basically, you knew he was kind of in the area, but not you weren't really patterning this deer at all. from the sounds of it.
No,
Like you
and
didn't,
I tried.
right, you tried, but it wasn't working out.
Absolutely. I took every picture of deer that I got. I went through and analyzed what the wind direction was on a given day, and the pictures of him that I had from earlier on in the season, I looked and I figured out what the temperature was that day. I figured out what the wind direction was. I figured out, I looked at every little variable. What was the barometric pressure doing? What moon phase were we in? I was trying to figure out anything that would give me a pattern to what he was doing. But, it was all just kind of random things. And then the other deer, I did the same thing with them. I started looking at when were does coming? Was there anything that kind of connected the dots with even a does showing up? Because I figured that, if I don't see this deer until the rut, that's my chance. Maybe one of these does will come in the estrus and I can be in here and maybe he'll just be tagging along with them for that 48-hour window or 24 hours, whatever the time frame kind of shows. And so I started analyzing every little thing I could, but at the same time, none of that makes them show up in daylight hours and show up at all, because that was 6-7 weeks at a time that I wouldn't get a picture of at all.
It starts to make you wonder if all the scouting and tactics that you laid out is really going to be working for you. It makes you second think everything you've done all season.
Yeah, it does. You get to where you're so frustrated. You've got this deer, and I didn't know how big it was. I knew it was huge, and I knew it had a lot of points. And it's just so hard to gauge what a deer is going to score when they look like this one. It wasn't a typical frame, so it wasn't like you could just look at the points and say, yeah, I think it's going to be this big of a deer. It was such a gnarly deer, and it looked so massive. But I just couldn't tell. But I really, really was extremely scent free in the way that I would get in and out of this place. The way that I can hunt this particular place, you don't disturb anything, and I had it that way for a reason. I would go right to my stand, and I would ease right back out of there, and I didn't mess around much, and I was extremely cautious about any scent that I would leave behind, and there were plenty of other deer that I would see that were routine deer that would come through, and other bucks pass by me, and you could tell that nothing seemed disturbed. Nothing. I didn't shoot any other deer. I had one deer on my mind, but it's still the same with a deer like that. They become extremely nocturnal, and he just wasn't showing up. And as it does, right when you think all hope is lost, and you just feel defeated, perseverance pays off. And again, if Kari hadn't encouraged me to go, she could have just as easily said, well, what's for supper? Let's figure out what we're going to eat. Any little thing, at that point, you're feeling so defeated, anything talks you out of going,
Right.
I've been hunting over and over and over, and that last afternoon, I felt like I had so much stuff I had to get done. And also, like I said, in 6 months, I had one afternoon picture, so I really did not feel like the odds were with me. But you know what? I prayed an awful lot about it, and when the time came, the deer came out and came right in front of me, and I shot at about 32 or 33 yards is about what the shot was. But, the prayer I talked about hoping it only ran 40 or 50 yards, it's so weird. The deer it may have went about 48 yards and laid down and died right there. So it was extremely quick and lethal. But still, where it fell was right behind some bushes. It kind of ran behind those bushes, like as it starts to go down a hill. So all I knew is it looked like a good hit, but I immediately started texting and calling my buddies saying, hey, I did it, because I was so discouraged leading up to that. I didn't think I was going to ever see the deer, and I'd hunted so hard and hoped so hard and hoped that I would see him, But so that evening I just started texting and said, hey, I did it. I shot the deer. Say a prayer for me. Just pray that I made a good hit. Just pray that, it's a perfect hit. I said it looked perfect, but with bow hunting, you just don't ever know. So all I did, I waited there till it got about dark. So I waited about 40 more minutes, and I got down, grabbed my arrow, and just took off and got out of there and went to tell Kari, that I got the deer. I shot him, and she thought I was kidding for a second. Then she could tell I was dead serious, and I had my arrow, but I hadn't really taken a good look at my arrow. I was still just so excited and just, so nervous. And,
Right.
and I looked at my arrow, then, I kind of walked into the kitchen sink and looked, and I was like, oh my gosh, it looks perfect, because it was just covered, and it looked the way you want to see an arrow look. And I just kind of forced myself to wait. I think I waited about an hour and 45 minutes, and then I went to kind of check the blood trail. But my buddies wanted me to wait for them to recover the deer. And one of them drove from 6 hours away. As soon as I called him and told him I'd shot the deer, he was in his tree stand. He said, I'm getting down and headed your way. So he got down and had to drive about 30 minutes to his house, change clothes, and then he took off. And another one of my real good hunting buddies, he and a good friend, he was from about 3.5 hours away. He did the same thing. He headed home, got changed, and took off, and they both showed up at our house, and they just wanted to celebrate with me. They know how much hunting means to me, so they went with me to trail the deer. It was a short blood trail. It really, it turned out the bushes that I saw the deer kind of disappear behind, he went right there and apparently fell over. He kind of fell over back towards me. He was just laying there, and it was probably, he might have made it 45 to 48 yards tops, and still, until I got my hands on his antlers, that's the moment I thought, man, this deer is a giant. And pictures, you can only tell so much about them. And to put my hands on the rack and start counting, we counted 27 points on there. 2 of the points are just at the 1 inch mark, but all the rest of them are really definable. They're 3, 4, 5 inches long at the shortest, So, and he had some that were 13, 14 inches long, and just tons of mass. And we green scored it that night at 218, and I think it was 218 and a quarter. And we got an official official Buckmaster score the other day at 210 and a quarter, and I'm getting it scored by an official Boone and Crockett score this weekend. So whatever he comes away with will be the official Boone and Crockett score. So
wow, that's a big deer. Holy smokes!
Yeah, just giant, just a huge deer. And it's really cool. Kari and I play a lot of different, we've done dove hunts where we've performed, in all hunt community, at lodges, and we've done mossy oak events, and we've played at the ATA show. And so it's just really neat to now have this deer, because we've got different magazines and things like that are, not only are they putting our story of the deer in there, but musically, because it all ties together. I'm able to hunt around our touring schedule, and sometimes our touring schedule slows down, but a lot of times it's wide open, and you just have to take what you can get,
Right. And
then on top of that doesn't guarantee you the days that you have to hunt that the weather is going to cooperate. So it's all so circumstantial.
So Billy, did you, back when we spoke back on the last podcast on, I think it was episode 12, episode 12 back in June, you were starting to see some pictures of this deer at that point?
Yeah, and I think right around then is when I think it was at the first part of June is when I got the first picture of that deer. It was it only stuck its head in the view of the camera, and there were 2 other really big deer that I was getting pictures of, and I was really impressed with them. And then I got that picture of him and didn't get another picture of him for a while, probably 6-7 weeks. And when I got the better look at him, even that picture, it looked like, holy moly, how many points does this thing have, and how massive is that? It was just a beast, and you could tell. But, when I got pictures of it looking at the camera and sideways and looking away, then I just knew that it was a giant. Everybody kept asking me,
right.
my close friends, what's it going to score? What's it going to score? And I told them, man, I don't know what it's going to score. It could be 170. It could be 200 inches. I don't know.
When it looks like that, you just say big. That's all you got to say.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I kept saying. I don't even want to speculate. I just said I know it's a Boone and Crockett deer. It's just giant. And the deer that I've seen it in pictures with, I know those deer, and I know how big they are, and he makes them look like they're a yearling. So
That's awesome. Hey, I got a quick question. You said you were shooting Bowtech. What kind of arrows and broadheads you got on the end of that Bowtech?
Gold tip and Slacker broadheads.
Slackers.
I was shooting a Slacker 100 grain, and man, do I love Slacker broadheads. They
laid the Slacker on him.
Fly. Absolutely. They fly great, and I've never had a problem with them not working right. You know, if you hit a deer, I mean, it does its job every time. And so many other broadheads that I have used over the years, man alive, some of them you just flat out lose faith in. And so it's really good to have equipment that you feel absolutely 100% about. And I did a lot of shooting and knew that my bow and my arrows and broadheads were flying great. So I felt really good about getting the opportunity. But you never know how your heart's going to do and what the circumstances are going to be if you get a chance. Because for me getting this deer, I can guarantee you I've had so many big bucks over my lifetime that the tiniest thing went wrong, and I never got them. They were right there. They were in range. They were right up under me, whatever the case may be. But one little thing went wrong, and that's all it took. You know, when you're hunting a big buck with a bow, I can guarantee you more often than not, you are not going to get the deer. You know, you can get, I generally, you know, I was able to get a buck that scored 151 with my bow last year. And I've taken some really good deer along the way. But I tell you, nothing compared to the amount of close calls that I've had where I didn't get the deer.
Right. So you've so go back to the hunt just a little bit. It was kind of like this random last ditch effort, so to speak, where you didn't really expect to hunt, and you were in your tree stand, and you've basically eliminated half of the because of the wind direction. You figured that you've got a 50% chance just because of the wind direction that was going on at that point. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's just about right. I had, you know, if the deer came and kind of crossed in front of me where I was looking, then I would be golden. If it came from anywhere else or tried to cross through at any other point, I was gonna be sick or never even know it. Otherwise, most big bucks that you ever spook, you never know it, you know. And so I'm just really, really particular about that and about my scent and everything. You know, I always am. Some people think I am just a lunatic when it comes to scent and what I'll try to do to prevent having any scent around or leaving scent out in the area. But I just really feel like if you're wanting to kill if you're wanting to kill a 3-year-old buck, I mean, you can make some mistakes and stuff like that. When you get a deer that's 4, 5, 6 years old, you can make one mistake in the year and be done for. You know, it just, in the areas that I've hunted growing up, that's the case.
Right.
You know, when you can make one mistake on a big buck, and you may not ever get another chance to do that again. So
now this is potentially the new Tennessee state record from what you're looking at.
That's right. It should be the current record. I think is like 189.
Okay.
With the bow, and even the most conservative measurements right now have it netting between 2.5 and 2.10.
Wow. Okay, so this could potentially blow it away.
Yeah, that's right. It's a big gap.
I want to just expand upon your fanaticism when it comes to scent control. Can you give us some of the items that you use to make sure you cover your scent in some of the things you do in the field?
Yeah, you know, it just depends really on a lot of the different places that I've had. There's been times where I've hiked a ways back, took a bath in a creek with clothes that I had bagged up in my backpack, and then I sealed the clothes that I was wearing that were not just regular street clothes. They were hunting clothes too, but I would bag them back up, put them in the bag, seal it up, and leave those clothes at the creek, and then head the rest of the way into my stand. And then I use a lot of scent away products and dead downwind, and I try to find stuff on sale like that. So I've used a host of different scent eliminating products like that. And I think one of the best things you can do is keep the pressure out of your area too. Don't, you know, for the same reason you wouldn't change your light bulb in your car and touch it with your bare hands, same reason you can't do that in the woods, you know, because they're going to pattern you. You're leaving behind oils and things like that on the branches. So really cover up, always wear gloves in and out of there, and I always wear rubber boots as well. I try to just keep everything contained and locked up, and then my clothes too, they stay in. I've got scent lock and scent blocker containers that I use, and then I have you know, fully my clothes, I have the base layers that are like silver microbial base layers and activated carbon outer layers. And so I really just try to do everything that I can possibly do It doesn't mean that you're scent free. It doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want and disregard the wind. But if it can minimize your scent, I've found that just all it can do is help. And whenever if you're out after meat or whatever, it's a whole lot different. But if you're out there and you're really trying to trophy hunt and you've got to do everything right, and then you've also still got to get extremely lucky. That's my take on it anyhow, and so I'll do anything that I can think of to keep my scent in check.
Gotcha.
And more we talk to different hunters from all over. It seems that the scent control, there's a ton more mistakes that you can make versus the non-mistakes. If you got something that, give us your one key factor of walking into your stand, what not to do walking in.
Oh my goodness. My probably number one thing is don't grab branches and push them out of the way with your bare hands, and don't do stuff like that, because deer, they can smell so good, and they can smell things in time frames. They can tell how old a scent is, whether they're in immediate danger or whether the danger's past. And I would say if you've got a spot too that's really super awesome to hunt, but you feel like you're kicking up the world to get in there to it, then don't hunt it. Figure out a different way, because you feel like in your mind, like, that's the only way I can hunt it. This is where the deer are at, but it's counterproductive, because they figure you out a lot faster. You're playing the same game. They're just equipped a whole lot better than you are. And that's something that, and another thing that I do a lot is baking powder, like baking soda. I just coat my boots with that stuff. I put a bunch of it in my boots. That way I really feel like it's a really, really good scent eliminator. It really helps a ton, and so I even with rubber boots, I still pile that stuff, and I do it all the time. As soon as it feels like it's kind of like I can't feel it on my feet in my boots, I'll put some more in there, and I just keep doing that all throughout the season, and I really do feel like that helps an awful lot.
That's very interesting, because you can throw a baking soda in your refrigerator, and it pulls any kind of odor or scent that's there gone.
Absolutely.
That's a great tip. Baking soda.
Thank you. I really feel like it works. I've seen times where I've had deer and the wind shifted and the wind was blowing right at them, and they get alarmed, but sometimes it's just a faint enough scent, if you've done everything right, that they know you're there. They know something's going on, but they're not as flighty as it would be if you just got off work and walked out there, and then the smell that they get is overwhelming, and they know. I think sometimes if you can keep your scent dampened enough, you might be able to fool them into thinking that, yeah, you were there, but you've already gone, and so that's, I just try, whenever you're still going to get outsmarted 9 times out of 10 or 999 out of 1,000, but you just got to try everything you can do, and also try anything that you can do that's going to make you feel confident, because if you feel confident, you're going to stay longer in your stand, and you got to be out there to have a chance.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and I'm gonna back up just a second here. Talking with you there, and you saying that a mature buck really doesn't let you know that you've been discovered, and that's a fact. I'm fortunate enough to hunt some nice deer, and you are too. A quick experience with me, and I know you've probably seen the same thing, but I had a real nice 5.5-year-old come in. He bumped my scent, and he was downwind of me, just caught just enough. He turned around, just kind of eased back out. Never made a blow, never made a sound. Didn't even know he was there. I put a visual.
No, he doesn't want you knowing anything, but he knows, and he is gone. And a lot of times they'll repattern if they feel that they're being hunted. Yeah, they'll change up everything. And then again, like I say, there's times where I've hunted all my life where there's a lot of hunting pressure, and sometimes you get one mistake, and then I've had times where I had one mistake that I made. Not only did I not get that deer that year, but then on as it went, I wound up never getting that deer. And not that I didn't hunt them hard and try to hunt them smart, but they just, sometimes if they get it figured out, you're in trouble. But
Billy, if you could just tell us real quick, how was the venison?
Oh, awesome, man! We love eating deer meat, always have, and so it is awesome. And that to me is like, oh, what a bonus hunting is in general. But even if it was out of sheer necessity, deer meat is one of my favorite meats to eat. I love steak, I love pork chops, all that stuff. But But man, deer meat, oh, it's so good.
Gotcha.
I probably don't eat it the most healthy way that you can eat it. I'm from the South. I like to deep fry stuff, but I love to soak it in milk, for 7-8 hours or overnight, and then I'll have it in cubes about the size of a chicken nugget or something, kind of beat it with either a meat cleaver or a knife, kind of tenderize it, and then bread it and fry it, and man alive.
Southern fried venison. Love it. Beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Billy, if any of our listeners would like to reach out to you, I know you're killing it in the music world, and you're also a successful deer hunter killing big bucks. So there are two reasons to reach out to you: one for this buck, and definitely for your music. How do people reach you?
Find us at kariandbilly.com. That's the easiest thing. Our Facebook is on there, and our Facebook, it's run by us. A lot of people have companies doing all of their social marketing for them. But if you write to Kari and Billy, we're the ones that write you back. If it's Kari and Billy website or the Kari and Billy Facebook page, we're the ones that write you back. And the way you can tell a lot of times, Kari, she's beautiful and elegant and classy and all those things. So if there's no grammatical errors, everything's spelled right, it's probably Kari writing to you. If there's a lot of y'alls and abbreviations, there's a good chance that's me writing to you.
Gotcha.
That's awesome.
Gotcha, Billy. Awesome.
Yeah, that's
very cool.
That's Kari. That's how you spell Kari's
Kari.
name. So if you just Google Kari and Billy, we're the first thing that pops up.
Very cool.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate your time, Billy. We'll let you get back to dinner and getting on the road.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Yep, thank y'all so much for your time, and thank you for wanting to share the story. It's a buck of 10 lifetimes, and for everybody out there that this reaches out to, believe me, it's an honor, and it's one that I never would have dreamed in a million years it would happen to me. And so it's definitely a deer that's celebrated and appreciated, and I feel blessed to have been given a chance at a deer like this.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. That's great.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Well, thank y'all so much. Hey, God bless y'all, and y'all stay in touch, okay?
God bless, Billy. Travel safe. Well, dude, that was absolutely amazing to listen to Billy share that story about how he harvested this ginormous Tennessee potential record buck.
It's got to be a awesome blood pressure razor when you get something like that on the ground. That's a monster buck right there. We do thank you, Billy, for submitting your story to us and getting on with us, man. That's an awesome buck, and couldn't be better to have some tips from Billy.
Tips from Billy. I mean, you don't get out in the field and harvest a deer like that every day. So when you can actually get somebody that did, and you can listen to the story and the details of what they used to actually get to that point, we're going to be able to incorporate that as listeners of the Big Buck podcast into our own hunting skill set and bag of tricks. So, awesome. Thank you so much, Billy, for joining us again. He was the first repeat guest we've ever had. So
that's awesome. That's what we want. We're going to keep shouting out to everybody. And as they harvest big bucks, we're going to talk to them. And if they come out with new products, we want to talk to them. We want to get all the information out to our listeners.
Yep. And then one of the things I wanted to point out too is that when we spoke to Billy back in June, he had no idea that he'd be harvesting this deer in November.
That's crazy. And
right.
That's what's awesome about the Big Buck Registry, Big Buck podcast. You just never know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. And I bet that somehow the deer gods were looking down upon him and saying, you spoke to the guys at the Big Buck Registry, therefore you're going to harvest this big deer.
Yeah, I have to agree, There's no doubt about it that talking to the Big Buck Registry, Big Buck podcast helps you harvest deer.
Right.
If you listen to the show, it's going to help you. There's no doubt about it. We got a new guy coming aboard, and I think he's going to help us out some of the laws and some of the not to do's out in the woods. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we did find Officer Fredman Buck, and he's going to be more of a regular on the show to kind of walk down all the rules and regulations as he sees it. Now, they may not be accurate, of course, because he's talking about rules from the 1970s, but at least, he's going to give us a new perspective.
The crazy thing about Officer Fredman Buck is that one day we was just talking here on a podcast, and somebody just broke in. It was just, it was so crazy that his old school radio actually picked up the Big Buck podcast. He thought we was doing a shout out for an officer,
Yeah.
And Fredman, you out there?
I think he must have overheard some of our comments, and he must have thought that must have been like a radio frequency interruption, like anything that was being broadcast from our radio receivers must have transmitted onto his CB from who knows when. And of course, we got to play along with him a little bit to tell him that, hey, this is dispatch calling in. We've located a Sasquatch or something like that. So, yeah, Fredman's going to be a regular on the show. We've got a ton of other great listeners or other great guests lined up for the rest of the year. So if you love hunting and if you love listening to people talk about hunting and deer hunting and want to know more about the behind the scenes at a lot of these deer hunting shows, we're going to be covering it all year long. So you're going to want to tune in every Saturday morning starting at 5 a.m. You don't have to be up for it, but you definitely want to check in because if you're up and you're heading to your stand, definitely tune in at 5 a.m. because it'll be there. But you can tune in all day long. We'll repost links. So even if your news feed on Facebook has already gone by, don't worry, there's another link coming.
Yeah, and I suggest that you get the podcast app on your iPhone.
Yes,
I mean that's awesome. You get the podcast app. You line up the Big Buck Registry, Big Buck Podcast.
Yep,
and you got it right there. Every time we release a podcast, it shows up right there.
The podcast app is an essential piece of this. I found podcasts.
I don't go nowhere without it.
I don't either. I really enjoy listening to podcasts, but if you're a fan of this show, and you know other people who are hunters who have iPhones, you definitely want to tell them to go get that podcast app and download it to your phone. It's free. And our show is free to listen to, but you're going to get a lot of great tips along the way. We're going to cover anywhere from cooking venison to harvesting the deer, how to get the deer out of the woods, butchering your own deer. We've covered those shows. We're going to have some more guests to cover even more in depth on those subject matters. But then every hunter that submits a big deer, we're going to want to break that down in the Big Buck Breakdown. And one of the best ways to do it and listen to that content is to actually go get the podcast app on your iPhone. Now, that being said, there are other podcast apps on other phones. The Android has one. You can go to Blueberry, BLUBRRY, and download it there. And that has its own app, and you can listen on Android, I believe, and a bunch of other types of phones have different podcast apps, but we're on all of them. So if you've tuned in on your friend's radio or friend's iPhone listening to the show and you don't have the same kind of phone, chances are you can get an app to listen to the show. Well, Dusty, I think that's a wrap, man. Thanks to Billy again for telling us the story of the big Tennessee whitetail he shot and probably going to be the next state whitetail record in the state of Tennessee.
Awesome buck.
Awesome buck. Dusty, how can the listeners reach you?
www.facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Look, give me a shout out, submit a picture. You never know. You may be the next guest on the Big Buck Registry, Big Buck Podcast. Jay, how can the folks get in touch with you?
All right. So we got a couple of different spots. Our website is www.bigbuckregistry.com. Always give us a call. Shoot us. You can actually text in a picture or shoot us a text about feedback about the show. You can call us if you want to. And we certainly have some callers that come in. 724-613-2825, text or call. You can visit us at Facebook, facebook.com/Big Buck Registry, and twitter.com/Big Buck Registry. Dusty, that's a wrap, man.
This is Fredman back, and we'll see you next week.
Good to hear.
Fredman, I think we just heard Fredman. Was that him, Jay?
I think he's patching in through the CB radio. That's what I think that was.
Yeah, that's craziness.
Yep.
Hey, folks, we like to call you guys friends out there, too. You know, not just a fan of the page, but of the Big Buck Registry, Big Buck Podcast. But it seems like more and more that we get to know everybody, you're becoming some awesome friends. And we like that, you know. Mm-hmm. It's all about getting their name out there for hunting big bucks, what you shoot, what you harvest, how you do it. You know, and we're going to start calling you more of friends than we are fans.
Absolutely. It's our community. It's our friends and community of the Big Buck Registry. We're just a piece of it. You guys are the glue that makes all this stuff stick. So
you got a great story, submit it, get with us, get in touch.
We want to hear it. Not only do we want to see the plaque and the pictures, but we want the full story on this show. That's how we're going to record it for and archive it like a museum. That's what we are, a museum of deer hunting stories. All right, man, I think that's a wrap. I'm Jay Scott.
And I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast. See you next week.
Can't wait.